A few days ago, I was looking at a discussion about hero combinations, and I saw something that honestly happened all the time in Call of Dragons. A player tests a build, get a bat report, change the hero, change the artifact, change the pet, change the town, change the formation, run another fight, get a better report, and then immediately say, okay, this build is better. And every time I see that happen, I think the exact same thing. How do you know? Seriously, how do you actually know what made the difference? Because here's the weird part. I think a lot of players spend hundreds of hours testing heroes and still have no idea what actually is working. And I'm going to give you an idea, some of my tests back in the days that I did. And one of those tests was actually I didn't have the artifacts that I have right now, like Mirage Orb or Dragon Fate or Infernal Flame. I mean, level 5 example. I was having the Terrifying Inferno, and it was like level 2. And I was having Phoenix Eye. So one of the things was I make so many changes till I actually make a change of the artifact. And the artifacts I was switching was Breath of Gargantis with the Phoenix Eye. And immediately my Legion gets better. And in the same time, by doing that, by taking out my Phoenix Eye from the Legion and put it to the other Legion, the Legion that was having Phoenix Eye start performing start underperform. So this is one of my personal experience about that. I was thinking I find a better build just to support one hero Legion to do more damage at the cost of reducing the performance of other Legion. And for a long time, I thought testing was simple. Change something, fight, look at the report, done. Seems logical. That's how most players test. That's how I used to test. Then I started noticing a problem. Sometimes I would make a change and get a better report and feel pretty good about it. Then I do repeat the exact same thing later and get completely different results. And suddenly the question becomes, was the build actually better or was something else happening? That's where things start getting interesting, because I realize most players aren't testing builds, they're testing a random situation. And those are not the same thing. And one of the examples I can actually give you was back in the days when I was doing my testing. Now, one of the ways I was doing back in the days testing was, till this day, I believe this is maybe the best way to do testing. Go for example, Darkling Patrol level 37 and, fight with this Darkling Patrol. Find another Darkling Patrol that is level 37 and its riders there and attack this Darkling Patrol. But yeah, my point is, when I when I was testing my builds and I was like, okay, we're ready to go, something interesting happened, and it's actually this thing that what you're going to see right now is sometimes your Legion perform good, like sometimes it don't perform that good, sometimes you get charged by sometimes you get blocked by infantry, sometimes you actually do some nice damage, sometimes you do good, sometimes you do bad. And one of the things is the whole context of the environment you're fighting in. If you're hitting full HP infantry, forget to have a great report if you're using AoE heroes, because by default AoE heroes are doing less damage. Exception is human, okay? Exception is human. But in general, if you go with Lilia, if you go with Thunderlin, hitting a full HP infantry almost you're going to have like one-to-one report, let's be honest, something like this. And yeah, I was believing I was making the testings, but in reality the environment was what was influencing the outcome. Am I going to get catched by cavalry? Am I going to get catched by blink infantry? Am I going to get catched by something else, or did I actually hit only mages and marksmen? Did these mages and marksmen get stuck at very nicely? Did I hit them very nice with my artifacts? There are just so many components. Think about how many variables exist in a single fight. Different targets, different enemy heroes, different pets, different artifacts, different, behemoth buffs, different troop count, different positioning, different engagement rate, different players, different spent levels. You see how many layers it have one fight. And then somebody changed 4 things at once and say, yep, hero solved it. How? How do you know it was the hero? What if the hero wasn't the thing that needs improvement? Because once I start thinking about that, I realize most players aren't struggling to find the best builds. They're struggling to identify what actually caused the result. Those are completely different problems. And I'm going to give you a result that didn't match what I was expecting. Now, lately, I tried to build Nea with Kuma. Obviously, right now is getting some crazy good results. But by testing, I was not quite sure this DJ is going to perform that good. And by opening the battle summary, then I noticed something, and this is the counterattack. Now, I really don't want to give you only the bad examples. I mean, for example, here I test this hero, it's performing that way. Later I test it and it's underperforming. I mean, I really don't want people or players watching my videos only to look from the negative perspective. It should be also positive. And this is something that, I test, and that was Nea with Kuma in Battle of Abyss. And as you can see, the results here are absolutely wild. Look at this thing. Even my war pet was like 150k, the damage he is doing. Now, why I was actually skeptical, because if I open and go to my pets, this is, by the way, my Venom Lizard. As you can see, it's not having stamina, but this is my Venom Lizard. Now, if you check it out, his spell is going to see that poison deals damage every second. Can be triggered once every 1 second. This is way more different from the majority of the people are using Mosrock Ouroach. So, where is this pet? Yeah, because Mosrock Ouroach immediately gets triggered because of the charge of the cavalry. Is going to give you stamina, I mean in percentage stamina, and also is going to give you damage can be triggered up to 5 times per second. And this is for the next 3 seconds. So you can see how much damage you can do with this crazy pet. So I was not quite sure with the Sand Lizard. I was expecting underperforming, but it ended up to be overperforming. Okay, so maybe this is something like just an example from my real experience where the result didn't match the change I make. I was expecting less, but I actually get more. And this is, as you can see, it's not like a single fight. It's actually a lot of reports. Some are 28k, some are 35k, some are 60k. I don't have bigger one, but yeah, you think about that. That's why when I'm testing something, I hate changing multiple variables. If I swap the hero, I want the artifact to stay. If I swap the pet, I want the hero to stay. If I swap the artifact, I want everything else to stay. Not because it's perfect, because otherwise the report becomes useless. The moment you change 5 things at once, you lose the ability to learn. And I think that's one of the biggest hidden mistakes in this game. Players are collecting reports, but they are not collecting information. Those are very different things. A report is data, information is understanding why the data happen. And this is for me one of the main reasons people are struggling to, find their own builds at the end of the day, is just because they're changing way too much things. Now imagine if you go and you start fighting with, okay, I'm going to give just a random, I'm going to deploy one random legion. Okay, we have Lilia Thunderlin. Imagine if I change the artifact and I change the pet. From where, how I'm going to know which one actually make the change? Because from one side, the artifact can boost the performance, but in the same time, it may underperform. So if you're changing the artifact and pet, you're basically seeing huge variables, huge systems in Call of Dragons get changed. So, and let's say the Legion do little better performance, but you don't know, is it from artifact, is it from pet? I mean, you can go and check it out at the battle report. uh don't get me wrong, you can basically just go here, go over the battle walk, open this thing and see, okay, launch a normal attack on Nea, lost 180 units. Nea Towns, blah blah, synergy effects 10 seconds, takes effect, blah blah blah. You can see here, Nea HP bypass was increased by 10% during blah. You're going to see basically everything, but nobody have time to actually check it out. All these reports, which reports actually hide pretty decent value inside them. And honestly, I think Discord make this problem even worse. Somebody post a report, everybody get excited, everybody copy it, nobody ask a question, and nobody ask, how many fights did you test? What were the opponent? Was it repeatable? Did this one happen once or 20 times? Because a lot of Call of Dragons advice comes from one report. One. Imagine making an account decision from a single report. That sounds crazy when you say it out loud. But players do it every day. And that's where I think players are incidentally creating their own misinformation. Not because they're lying, because they are overconfident. And here is one strategy that I did back in the days. That was with my infantry hero. I was having Kuma and Gorish. Both of them was actually awakened, and I finally awake Skogo. My Skogo is also, yeah, awakening. So from first look, I was thinking, okay, here is the thing. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take Gorish. I'm going to pair him with Skogo. It should do crazy amount of counterattack. Just by Gorish alone is having like 20%. Spirit Bond Torque is having additional effect, 20% more counterattack. Skogo is having diffused counterattack. Legion deals additional diffused counterattack. Also Awaken, it is having 10% counterattack. You see counterattack after counterattack after counterattack, and at the same time you see Gorish boosting by 60% the physical attack. This is boosting also the counterattack. And I was like, Gorish and Skogo should be outperforming my Gorish Kuma, and maybe I'm going to use Kuma with Joran. Where is Joran? Yeah, I was planning to, I'm still actually plan to do that, but I'm planned to, use Joran with Kuma. So I was like, okay, I'm having like 2 solid legions, but the moment I switched to Gorish with Skogo, brother, the report dropped badly, and it's not like just a single fight, because here you can see Nea with Gorish, how many fights I did, and the reports are not that bad, because yeah, I'm going to have like 60k, but I'm going to have like 22k also. Even though 22k or 23k is still looking good, but it's like 3 times less. So you can actually see an average is going to be like 35, 40k, 40k, and the moment you strike the people like 3-4 times, they start having like panic attacks when they see your legion, and they always watch for your legion. So it becomes a little more hard to do what you're doing the first time, but you get the idea. There is just so many tests, And sometimes the strategy, like Gorish with Kogo, is looking very solid, but in the same time, after more testings, after these seasons, facing mages that are having defense penetration, Yuming crush infantry. Right now, Kantaman is crushing infantry. Remember, I have him like awakened. This bad boy is crushing infantry. So yeah, it's just not performing the way I was expecting. The longer I have played this game, the more suspicious I become of amazing reports. That's probably sounds weird, think good reports create. I mean, you won't think good report create confidence. For me, good report creates questions. Why was this report good? It happen again? What happened against different heroes? What happened against stronger opponents? What happened in the larger fights? What happened without the behemoth buff or whatever? What happened if repeat like 20 times? Because a build isn't strong because it win once. A build is strong because it keep winning. And I think a lot of players incidentally confuse those two things. And this is one of the reports that I already show you about Neo and Kuma that completely changed my perspective over Neo and Kuma. I was looking, to get some merits with my Gorish and Kuma, but Neo Kuma is faster, is giving some good amount of amount of merits. Now, some people are going to ask, but Burgas, are you not going to use infantry on the battlefield? Most likely, I'm going to use my Goris Kogo on the battlefield just to be more tanky. Or I can actually use Gorish with Eliana. It's also very tanky legion. But mostly, I'm going to count to provide tanks on the battlefield and not providing DPS infantry. Or the moment when I level up my Joran, I may actually change Nea with Kuma with something else. But yeah, in general, this is the reports that's changed my opinion over this legion. To be fair, I saw this legion from the one of the videos of the guns. So if you don't check this bad boy, go check him out. He also provides some decent tips and tricks. So yeah, I tested and yeah, it's actually giving some decent results at the end of the day. Then I noticed something else. The players who consistently find strong builds usually aren't the players doing the most testing. They are the players doing the cleanest testing. That's a huge difference. Most players increase test quality. Good testers test quality. Quantity, good testers are testing quality. One variable, one change, one question, one answer. Then move forward. That's actually slower. It's actually slower, but weirdly enough, it gets you to the truth faster, because now your every report is teaching you something instead of confusing you. And that's when I realized the real problem. Most players don't have a hero problem. Most players don't have a artifact problem. They don't have pet problem. Most players have testing problem. Because if your testing process is bad, every conclusion become unreliable, which means every recommendation become unreliable, which means every future investment become unreliable. And now the mistake become much bigger than a single report. Now we're talking about account decisions, pet investment, hero investment, artifact investment, all being influenced by bad testing. That's expensive. And I was also victim of that way of thinking, because I also have a heroes that I invest, that I, later just prove me it's not worth my investment. One of the heroes is Madeline. I invest in her, but right now I just want to get, I want to get my tokens back. Other hero that I invest a lot was actually Theodore and Forondio, because they're maybe one of the weakest cavalry heroes in the game. Kinara is is other hero that I invest. and just because, and mostly was because of some good reports or some like deep research, and I have some conclusion. And here is the thing with the conclusions: every time somebody make a conclusion, they strongly believe in that, and when they strongly believe in that, they start looking the things that is just going to support their decision. In the majority of the cases, just one report is enough just for the person to say, okay, I'm going to go for this hero, or I'm not going to go for this hero. That's why I changed my this is how sometimes my account decision gets changed. Back in the days, no more. The funny thing is that once I stopped trying to prove builds were good, my testing actually improved, because I stopped looking at for confirmation and start looking for understanding. That's a completely different mindset. One mindset asks, how do I prove this works? The other one asks, what is actually happening here? And usually the second question leads to much better answers, which is why I think most players never find the best build. Not because they are not that they aren't testing, because they are changing too many things at the same time. And once that happens, every report starts telling a different story. The problem is you never know which part of the story is true. So I'm curious, have you ever looked at an old report and realized you had no idea what actually caused the result? Because honestly, I think most of us have done that at least once. I know I have. Anyway, guys, that is for this video. Huge thank you to all channel members for supporting the channel. If you do like to support the channel as well, you can check out the join button below. Members get early access to videos, exclusive content, member shoutouts, and Warwords member can reach me out directly for strategy and account advices. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.